Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to the Bravo with Sheila channel. It's another great night. So glad you could all join us tonight. Hey, Anae, we see you out there. Hey, Vaughn, Eric, blessings to you. Hello, Michelle Roach. How you doing out there? So, good evening again, everybody. Welcome to the Bravo with Sheila channel. I am your Thursday night host, Lady Dawn B. And as always, I do not come alone. Nope. I come with my squad tonight. I brought some friends who I will introduce shortly. But right now, again, I just want to thank you all for joining us. And I hope that you will like, subscribe, and share so that others can come on and be a part of this great conversation and become a part of the Bravo Nation. And to our silent watchers, we see you, we love you, we appreciate you, and we want you to know that you don't have to stay silent. Come on and jump in the comment section and be a part of the conversation on tonight. So, welcome everybody. We are going to have a great time. We want to give honor, as always, to the Queen Bravo herself, Pastor Sheila Ingram. Come on, give it up. Give her a bravo, for without her, we would not be here. I'm always honored, as on Thursday night, she so graciously yields the captain's chair to me to share and have amazing conversation as we go along. So, we've been doing a good job. We've been having some meaty talk lately. And on tonight, we are going to have our own version of verses. How it's been going out, lately, one musician against another musician. Well, last month, in the month of May, we had the ladies come on and they were in the ladies' room. And, when you go into the ladies' room, you do all things girly and take care of your personal business. So we had a conversation that was geared to us having some discussion about some of the issues that we as women face, deal with, and encounter in relationships and with one another. And that proved to be very fruitful. And in all fairness, in the month of June, since it was Father's Day and we are committed, we're still in the month of June, to the men, we brought on some of the brave bros, some of my brethren folk, to talk about the men, to let the men have the stage on that night. Let the men speak. So we opened up the men's lounge and they came on and shared as well. So tonight we want to wrap it up and bring it head to head and stir up the pot. So, with that being said, I want to take a minute to introduce our Bravo squad on tonight. And we should have, I don't know if the men ran a little scared today. I'm not sure just yet, because only one of our brave brothers showed up, but that's all right. We're going to love them anyway. Amen. Amen. So we have my brother, Minister Donald Bradford. Since he is the only male on the panel for tonight, I'm going to introduce him first and let him greet the people. Come on to or for, say hello to the good people tonight.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Testing 1, 2, 3. Glad to see everybody. God bless, God bless. And yes, tonight is the night, and if I have to fight alone, I'll fight all by myself. It's all right. Would be nice to
Well,
have a little
all
gang.
right. Okay, hold it down for the brethren. Hold it down for the brethren. That's all right. You got some testosterone in the comment section. You got Von Eric with you, so you're not fighting alone necessarily. You just might be the only one up here representing. So next up, we have my dear sister, also known, her name is Tanya Williams. She's no stranger. She is a part of the Bravo squad. She is T blessed, and we want her to greet the people and say hello.
Good evening, everyone. For some reason, I can't participate in the comment section. My something's wrong with it, so I didn't want anyone to think I'm ignoring you. But good evening, everyone, and I'm excited for tonight.
All right, and all right. It's okay. We know. Okay, so we just gonna listen. There's some technical difficulties that's going on across the nation tonight, but that's all right. We gonna press through and have this conversation anyway. I think it was last week or the week before. None of my devices worked. My notes flew all over the room. Everything that could happen did happen, but we went on and had the conversation anyway. So we just gonna let technology do what it does, and we gonna do what we do. All right. So you good, Tanya, you good. And next up, I want to introduce and give space to greet the good people. My bestie from, well, she's not from the West. I was gonna say my bestie from the West. She's from the West side of Jersey. None other than Elaine Edwards, aka Queen Bee. Come on, greet the people.
Hello, everyone. I am excited about the conversation tonight. Can't wait to see how this one goes.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, it should be good. Now, last but not least, Donald's ready already. Last but not least, I thought we might need a mediator or voice of reason because of the squad that I had scheduled to come on. We're a little spicy, we're a little extra. We keep it real out here in the field. So I figured we needed a voice of reason, someone to rein us in and someone who can bring some wisdom and enlighten us in our ways. And that is none other than my mom, also the mother of two or four. I'm four or four, which is Donald, otherwise known as Pastor Rosa. Come on and greet the people, Mom. I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Just want to say hello. I hope that I'll be that voice of reason because sometimes they have to be that for me. So let's hope I do my job tonight.
That is true. That is true. That is true. So thank you all for joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And as always, here on the Bravo with Sheila channel, we are so glad that you took the time out to join us on tonight. We are not here to convince nor to convict anyone, but we are here just to share open and honest dialogue in a safe space so that we can improve communication with one another, and most importantly, we can improve the relationship within ourselves. So when we get ourselves together, we are better for those that we are involved with. So with that being said, I am very excited because we had some good takeaways from the two sessions that we had with the ladies and with the men. So, Donald, we're going to have to use you a lot on tonight. I know you can handle it, bro. I know you can. You got it. You're the voice of the men on tonight. But there are 3 to 4 different topics that I want to touch on tonight. I'm gonna have to switch up the platform just a little bit, but we want to get the male and female response to these areas. Okay, so in talking with each other and talking with each group, one of the things that I found with us as women is that we seem to have a naturally defensive stance at this point in our lives. Most women, which is why we respond the way we do. We are quick to respond and shut it down and pop off because the minute we hear what we don't like, we are ready to fight and defend. And that's something we as women we have to learn how to pause and breathe through and develop a little bit more of a calmer demeanor. It's one of the things that we found that I found it was key in our conversation. And for the men, to be honest, what I found with the men when we were speaking is that pretty much I had to pause in the conversation because at some point, every question I asked them about them, they didn't answer about them. Their answer was really it was reflective of whom they serve, but it was never really about them. And what that left me understanding or realizing is that our men have been put in a position where they don't think of themselves, and they feel that might be why they feel that their voice is not heard, because they are in a position where they're always serving or always leading or just always doing that. Somehow along the way their own personal identities got lost. So we want to try to open that up and find a way to bridge the gap. So we want to have real conversation, real talk, and real resolution. So y'all ready? All right, here we go. So the first topic on tonight is going to be on communication. This is a big one because in all relationships, communication is key. So, Donald, representing for the men's room on tonight, please share what is the number one issue that you find lacking in communication when it comes to women? Please share.
Well, now, number one, get ready, get ready, get ready, is listening completely to the sentence or question being made. That's number one. In other words, you can you you cannot always predict or assume you know what the man is going to say scriptively, or I forget what the word that best fits what I'm trying to say. Which I'm really saying is sometimes ladies tend to assume already what the man is going to say when he starts certain words. And even though there's truth in that line of communication, um, where yes, it's common to hear the gentleman, the man, the husband, the boyfriend, the significant other say the first set of words that lead you to automatically thinking that, oh, okay, I know how this sentence is going to end, so let me jump in right in between. Even if you do know that, let him finish. Let him finish. But do understand that sometimes those first few words we say is not going to always lead to the sentence that you're trying to complete for him. So don't complete our sentence. Let us get the full sentence out, whether you heard it before or not. You might find that something that there's a little twist and a little change in it, but don't be presumptuous. That's the word. My wife did that to me today. I had to say, honey, honey, honey. Seriously, that's not what I was getting ready to say. And of course, there's always that, yes, you was, and I'm like, no, I wasn't. And then that's how the conversation always kind of gets lost in whatever the discussion is about. Because whether I'm right or wrong, whether she's right in assuming it, whether I tell her she's not right because that's not what I was getting ready to say, fact of the matter is, if a man doesn't get his full sentences out, he feels like, okay, let me just retract to my shell now. You won this battle unfairly, but because I'm trying to keep peace in the household, or keep peace in the relationship, or peace within myself, or help you to keep your peace, yeah, I'll back away because who really wants to? I mean, I'm one particular strange male that has say to a lady, whether it's my wife, my sister, my mother, work, job, whatever. Hey, I'm done. You won. Whatever it was. I don't even care anymore because now you just turned the conversation in a direction that I wasn't even trying to go in. Like, we don't, I think speaking generally for us men, we're really not trying to argue. We're really not trying to hear you at your heightened level of temperament, your bad day, whatever the case is. If we're adding to that day by what we said or what we started saying, and then you jump in like that, then then that's what's going to cause us to honestly pull away, or in some cases, raise our voices and our temperaments, and then we're totally off track of what it was we were even talking about. And you ladies have experienced that, I'm sure enough, when you're dealing with your male friends and male relationships, when he starts to go, forget it, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I forgot even what I was talking about, because now we're talking about socks and I was talking about apples, like that kind. And I passed the mic.
Well, thank you so much, Minister Donald. We wanted to put it into straight action what you just said and listen completely. We did not wish to interrupt you. So, with that being said, ladies, as we have heard the representative from the men's lounge, I'm going to ask if Tanya, because I know how much you enjoy when Donald speaks. So, Tanya, what say you to his points of listening completely and their intention in their responses is not to argue? What say you, Tanya?
I think that Minister Donald is very, mature and seasoned. And so I think that probably is the case for him. But I do agree that women, sometimes we can jump to a conclusion because we feel like we already know what's being said. So I will agree with him on that part of it. But I think depending on the maturity of the male, I do believe the issue is understanding how to communicate in the first place. Do I even understand how to communicate? Because I feel like sometimes with males, they're not communicating at all. So women are feeling like they're trying to pull information out of the male because they're not really saying much. And sometimes when women are asking, if everything's okay, and I know they have to feel safe in all these different things, but I think that sometimes is the issue. The woman is wanting the male to communicate, and sometimes they're holding a lot of things in and they're not saying anything.
All right. Well, thank you for that share. I do agree. I just want to pause for a quick minute and ask if you wouldn't mind subscribing, and sharing as we go along on tonight. We want to get more people into this room to share in the conversation. Want to welcome those who just came in the room. Sir Hale, we send you love and blessings and a big bravo as always, sir. Lady Novoa, good evening. And again, to our silent watchers, those who are up in the silent section, we see you, we love you, and we appreciate you. Hit that like button, hit that share button, and subscribe. So I want to thank you, Tanya, for what you shared in response to what Minister Donald said. And one of the key things that you said was, as far as women are concerned, is men have to know how to communicate first to begin with, which is true. And I think that's something that we all have to do. One thing has to be balanced across the board is that we are creating a safe space for us to communicate one to another, and that we are creating a safe enough space for us to be honest on both sides, because we're always going to hear something that we don't like, but we have to learn. And Tanya hit on the point of maturity. We have to be mature enough to be able to listen through the things that we don't like in order to get to the end of the sentence that the person is trying to express. So those are very good points, and I hope that we are taking note and taking this in. I know I myself, I am quick. You have about 31, maybe not, okay, maybe about 16 to 19 seconds to say, keep me, mind your words in the beginning, because I got about 19 seconds and I'm gonna shut down, or it's a whole nother thing. I'm gonna do just like Donald was saying, by that point, it's about 19. It's about 19. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And if we're honest with ourselves, because no one wants to hear anything past, once we've heard the thing that irritates us, no one wants to hear anything else after that. It's like you lost me. But we have to be willing to remain in the conversation with whomever it is we're listening, whoever it is that we're talking to, in order to get to the end result. Because otherwise, you're going to create this cycle that continues in this pattern that builds up a lot of resentment, a lot of aggression, because no one feels heard and everybody's talking. So thank you, Donald, for sharing from the Men's Lounge. We have a comment from Michelle Roach. She says communication and listening should be the center of the relationship. And that is true. Thank you for that, Michelle. Listening and communication should be the center of all relationships. But if you're honest, okay, maybe it's just me. Sometimes I don't even listen to my own self. I start saying something, within myself. And by the time I get to the point where I'm starting to frustrate myself, I'm like, you know what? No, never mind. Okay, all right. I'm not even going to finish, my full thought, and I just don't even finish the path. I don't allow myself to work through that point of the conversation that is uncomfortable. And if this is not, it might just be me. It might just, I'm a creative. So, we got a lot of things that go on up in here at the same time. But we have to be able to stand flat-footed, 10 toes down, especially in the midst of the conversation, in the places where we are hearing the things that are difficult for us to hear. Hearing someone out is not going to take away from our own point of view. We lose nothing. I feel like the only time we really are afraid, or, I found, to listen, and this is, I don't have no statistics for it. This is from the Book of Dawn. But I feel from my own experience, the only time I am not willing or afraid to listen and hear out what another person is saying is when I either know that what they're saying is true and I'm wrong and I don't want to deal with it, or if I feel like what they're about to say is about, when I'm not too solid about whatever it is, the issue or the point may be, when I'm not too solid in my own stance and I feel like you might sway me. That's just my personal convictions when it comes to hearing someone out through those hard spaces. So I want to jump to Elaine, aka Queen B. And I want to ask you, Elaine, to speak for the ladies' room. What do you find is the number one issue in communication when it comes to the men front?
That they
What say
don't
you?
communicate. The fact that they don't communicate most of the time. Um,
Can I pause you right there for one moment?
yes, you can.
All right. You said that they don't communicate. All right. So is it that they don't communicate or they're not communicating the way we would like them to
No, they don't communicate.
at
Period.
all?
Yeah, that's my experience. I mean, and women are chatters. We love to tell you about our whole day from beginning to end and everything in between. And sometimes I think I'm more like a man with that. I don't want to hear about all of that. Tell me the highlights and
You
I'm
like the
good.
bullet points.
Yes, give me the bullet points. But I do find that and I'm just speaking from my own experience with the men that I have dated, um, they don't tell you what's going on till after it's over, after they've resolved it, after the issue has come and gone, and you are left in the dark. Meanwhile, you call them for everything. Hey, I got a flat tire. Can you come help me? They'll tell you afterwards, yeah, my car broke down 2 weeks ago and I had to have it towed. And you find out everything afterwards. Unless it's something really traumatic, they're not going to share. That's been my experience. I wish they would talk more, because you can't read their minds. We can't read their minds. This is a conversation that I've had, so I know. I've said exactly, I cannot read your mind. So could you please share what's happening, what's going on? And when I said that, they then came back with, I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't realize I was pushing you away. Because the lack of communication can sometimes, I think, for women, be construed as, you don't want to be with me, therefore you tell me nothing. When that's really not the truth. They really just don't know how to communicate. I think we lost our host. So I feel like, some men don't know how to communicate, and that's probably one of the bigger issues in a relationship. Um, Not that they communicate differently, but that they don't communicate at all. Even when there was a guy I dated and something happened and I said, "Can we talk about it?" I don't want to talk about it. But we need to talk about it. He said, literally, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to talk about it. After that, we're never going to bring it up again. Okay. But that was his way of communication.
All right. Well, thank you for that share. And I think sometimes you have very valid points, and I totally understand where you're coming from. From my experience, I feel that men, even in their silence, that is one of their forms of communicating. It's just, it's their way of communicating doesn't always come off the way that we would like it to, or it's not presented in the package in which we are used to or accustomed to receiving. So I say that to say you have to know what your method of communication is. Because, like I said, men are very, my dad wasn't a big talker. He didn't do a whole lot of, very much, it was the bottom line, bullet pointed, get to the point. He don't want to hear what color the tree was when you walk by it. He don't want to hear what happened. Did you stop and pick a flower on the way to the store? He's like, what happened? And a lot of men are like that. They're not detail oriented, and this is no disrespect to men. It's just in the communication, in the area of communication, they're not big on the details. They want to know where the issue lies so that they can get to it. So I think we have to be open to receive people in the way that they communicate, and we have to understand. And you can always help or encourage or teach someone how to communicate with you better. But in all of those facets, we have to be able to create a safe and honest space for each of us to do that, where we are respected and we're not trying to change someone, but we're trying to help open you up to communicate or understand my way of communicating. So, what we've gathered from this point of communication so far is we have to listen completely. Uh, Man's intention is not to argue when they are sharing with us their point. And that we, as Elaine said, men do not communicate at all, but we have men have to learn how to open up and communicate. And women, we have to learn how that man communicates. If he's a silent person, maybe he communicates in gestures, or maybe he communicates, in gestures or actions as opposed to his words. A lot of times men think that we're supposed to know, um, because we have been taught, it's a premise that we are intuitive and we are instinctive and nurturing, is what I've found. I want to read a comment by Michelle Roach. She said, my mom told me to always think before you speak. You can't retrieve words once they're spoken, which is true. And we should all be thinking before we speak. But truth be told, we don't always have the opportunity to, because sometimes our feelings get ahead of our words. And so we start speaking our feelings before we start to think about how they should come out with words. So we have to grant each other grace in this area. Um, Before I open it up to share for everyone, I want to ask Pastor Rosa. Pastor Rosa, what say you now that you have heard from the men and the women on this point of communication? What wisdom can you give to us as men and women to help operate better in the communication space? What say you, Mom?
Okay, well, first of all, I think Tanya hit right on the head when she said it's about maturity. If you know that a person is a certain way, I think there's a certain amount of resilience that you have. You know that this person is this way, so you already have this plan in mind, that when they do this thing that you don't like, you know how to deal with it without it getting into a argument or whatever. It is a matter of maturity, and we can't always be on ceremony with someone. That you have to program yourself. Just get on talking about one side, not talking about the other side. You can't always be on ceremony with someone that you're in relationship with. You have to be able to be yourself. If I'm a blonde, I'm a blonde. And that's just it. When you got involved with me, you knew I was a blonde. So then if we're going to be in this relationship, you have to find out how to deal with me, not just every woman that's out there. Your relationship with me, so you have to know how to treat me. And then when it comes to communication, in all honesty, my opinion is this: when a man or a woman is not communicating, it's not that they don't have anything to say. They don't want you to know. There's a reason behind them not saying anything. They know what it is that you want to hear, but there's something behind that. If you're in a relationship with somebody, guess who you want to know everything about you? That person, be it a marriage or be it a serious relationship. If it's not serious, it's just a casual thing. So, you just go out to dinner, come home. But if it's someone that you're intimate in mentally, spiritually, in any other kind of way, you want to know this person. So, this thing about, well, yeah, I don't want to hear that, or whatever the case may be. That's because there's something else on the agenda. Yeah, my husband did not communicate. One didn't communicate because he had no patience. The other one didn't communicate because he was up to stuff. So he didn't want you to know what he had, what was in the foreground. But we would do certain things and it was a clue. And I would just say, listen, just go ahead. You don't have to pick an argument. Just go. Go wherever it is you're going, take all your stuff because you're not coming back. But I mean, let's just be real, but like Tanya said, it's about maturity, and my ex-husband had a very, very bad habit. The father of the two and the four had a very, very bad habit that when we would get out, he had this little silly way of trying to embarrass me or whatever. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you really care about this person, you don't do that. You don't embarrass people in front of other people. We're in Macy's and you want me to walk behind you. I said, no, you don't want me to walk behind you. You really don't. You really don't want me to walk behind you because if I do, there's a recourse, But I'm just saying, this was the how my marriage to my children's father was. It was one big joke, So if you care about somebody, listen, listen to what they're saying. Work it out some type of way because that person represents you, not everybody, So we're all speaking about from a general, from a relationship, our personal relationship. So, we're speaking for that. And that doesn't include everybody. Every man doesn't communicate. Every man does not communicate. Every woman doesn't, snap her neck, So, we just have to build, find a plan, find a way to deal with this woman, this man.
Well, you have heard it from the voice of wisdom. Thank you for that share, Mom. So many good things that you said and that you made mention of. And I think what we can walk away with on the topic of communication before we move on to the next topic is that um, as we emphasized about being about the maturity in relationships, and it's not just men and women. It is. I know we're on tonight, doing our verses, but these lacks of communication will grow out into all the other relationships that we're in. They spread out to our children, to our coworkers, to our friends, and as we speak about maturity, as that kept coming up, we also have to realize that there is a learning curve when it comes to maturity. Maturity is something that we have to grow into. So we also have to give grace to each other in the realm of communication. And we communicate differently with different people because every relationship is different. So we have to give that grace. We have to be willing to step into the learning curve with each other and hold each other down throughout the curve until we get back to a straight line. Um, Key is creating that safe and honest space, I believe. Also, a good point Mom brought up is, we about knowing who you're with and knowing yourself. We have to know it speaks to capacity. Do I have the capacity to communicate with this person? Because some people, it's like pulling teeth, and nobody wants to be in a relationship of any kind, friendship with somebody you have to constantly pull teeth. Some people don't, it's like a faucet and don't stop talking. And nobody really wants to be in that kind of conversation, that kind of, relationship either. So we have to find that balance and you have to know your capacity and know what we are equipped to manage within those relationships. So if anything, we can walk away from the point of communication is knowing that there's a maturity that comes with it when it's a point of communication. The maturity comes as a learning curve that we have to give grace to one another for. The same grace that we want extended to us is the same grace that we have to be willing to give. If you want to be heard, you have to listen. We have to create safe spaces for us to be honest with one another and know our capacity and if we are equipped to manage. So before we move on to the second point, does anybody want to share anything else, any feedback? what's on your mind while you're thinking. I want to read a comment from Ine, which says communication is key, is so key in relationship. And Von Eric says, Amen. So we want to again thank you everybody and welcome you to the Bravo with Sheila Network Thursday night with Lady Dawn B and friends. Please like, subscribe, and share. Invite people into this conversation. We want to hear from you. We want you to put your thoughts, your feelings, your input into the chat so that we can talk back to you. So I want to open the floor. I'm sorry, Elaine, Tanya, Donald, do you have anything else you want to share on communication before we get into the next topic?
I'd like to challenge what Elaine said about men have to learn how to communicate.
Challenge. Okay.
Challenge. So, Elaine, why do you think, why do you feel that men have to learn? You were very specific that men have to learn to communicate. And communication is two ways. Do women always communicate so clearly and so eloquently as you strongly feel they do? Please share.
I will share. Thank you for the challenge. I was only speaking from my own experience. So, my own experience is that women will mostly tell you whatever you want to know, and even that what you don't want to know, because we're very chatty. We, I mean, there are always the exception to the rule. You know, you have people who don't like to share, it's their personal life or whatever. But for the most part, we talk. I'm in meetings all day, mostly women. We never end on time because someone is chatting, someone is talking, someone, and you can say 1,000 times, hey, we got to go. This meeting has ended. But I find with men, you are pulling and pulling and pulling to try to get whatever it is that needs to be said. And like Dawn said, that silence is sometimes their form of communication, but that's not communication.
So,
That is how they behave when something is bothering them. But communication is actually open dialogue, talking, the other person listening for comprehension, and then responding. That's communication. So you have to be able in a relationship to know when you have to speak. You can, and the person, I remember distinctly this conversation with one of the persons. He said, I thought everything was great.
well,
So silence is not, in that case, it didn't work. So you have to be able to talk, both parties, listen for comprehension, like you said, listen to the whole thing, and then be able to respond, and not respond with what you think they said, but what they really said. That's communication.
But no response is a response.
It's not. If you look up communication, no response can often be misconstrued. So then that's not a part of communication. So if you don't
It is, but it's a
respond,
response.
but if you look up I'm going from the meaning of communication. So if you don't respond, that means you don't have a response, but the other person cannot comprehend your no response. So there's no communication between those other people. So communication is me and you sitting down, talking like we are right now, you listening, me listening, and us responding in a way that says, I heard you, you heard me. Now I understand what you meant. You understand what I meant. That's communication. A lot of times when the other person is not responding, that leaves room for assumption. So that is not, communication is actually part of talking, listening, and comprehending. Listening
Okay,
so
is
but if
part of communication.
I'm
but if a person's listening and they're choosing not their response to whatever it is you said is not to respond. They're communicating in their body language or however it is in their
or
silence
silent.
that I'm choosing not to respond. I understand what you're saying, and
Right. Then
we
it's not a,
see it, but you're to me more speaking of how they react to what you're saying
right.
as
But
and they're
it's
communicating that I'm choosing not to
not to,
respond.
But then you, the person who's on the other end listening and waiting for a response, it opens the door for you, the listener, to say, you don't care, you don't have anything to say. It's it has to be two ways. It can't be one way.
But I
But
gotta say
they're
this.
non Go
Go ahead.
ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, let her finish.
Yeah,
No,
that's
Go
all.
no,
ahead,
go
finish,
ahead.
Pam.
What were you gonna say, Donald?
No, finish. They're non-response. I take it
Their
straight. Yes.
non-response is just how they're reacting. That's not communication. That's not
So,
communication.
so isn't that something? So I'm going on my experiences since we're talking about our experiences, right? Since that's really your point based on your experience. I too have worked. I work every company I've worked at. I am the only male or only other male in a predominant female career industry environment. Certainly, I do agree with what you said as far as how women can be chatty, because Lord knows, women there are women that talk worse than men, worse than sailors. Come to think of it, but women too exercise a non-response pattern when a man asks this question: "Are you all right? Are you sure you're all right?" How many times do we have to ask that question till we get on your nerves, and then everything that was going on in your head suddenly comes out. Not only not only does what come out towards us is what you were mad about, but it's everything else that happened years before that, before us, or years with us. So I don't want to take away from what you said. I respect what you said. I kind of just challenge it because I'm saying, it's not men that just don't. I agree. Men, us, us guys, us fellas, us men do need to be more open in communicating. And I'm going to try to say something that might help or might not help, but I'm going to say it anyway. Us men need to work on that. We do. The reason why we probably don't do it as much is because our feelings is one of the issues that we are trained as men, developed as men, it's in us as men to not show emotion when we're feeling an emotion. And I think that's why most times we express it by anger. But but to the non-response statement that we're circling on right now, that's not one-sided. The other thing I want to say was, do women really communicate? So I want to go back and share something real quick. It's going to be real fast.
Yes, because we
Once
want to
upon a
wrap
time,
up this point so we can
I'm gonna
get to the
wrap it up
second
real
point, which
in
this
10
is leading
seconds.
into.
Once upon a time, I was asked a question. I was told if I tell the truth, I won't get mad. And I paused and paused and paused, and then told the truth, and then you got mad about something that happened years before when I met you or before I met you. So I just want to kind of throw out there that just that yes, there's an issue there with the men needing to communicate better, but I don't think it's just men that need to know how to learn to communicate. Maturity was the key word. I passed the mic.
But in response to that, I know, Dawn, but in response to that, so, and I only know all of this stuff because it was part of my master's degree. So in response to that, the woman did respond. She said nothing was wrong, but you knew that something was wrong. So you kept asking her. That was the first point. And the second thing is our emotions are not always a response in communication. Communication is between two people or three people or four people, because you have people who talk to themselves, but it's between whoever you are having a conversation with and looking for a response between, if you're in a relationship, you it can't be just one person standing there talking and the other person not responding. If the other person is not responding, there is no communication, because you now have left the door open for assumptions, and then you leave because you think you assume the other person means something by not responding, and that is not the key. That might not be the case. They might have just felt like they don't know how to express themselves, right? So it has to kind of be, like you said, a safe place, like Dawn was saying, for two or more people to be having a conversation and communicating. You have to be able to have the door open so both people leave with an understanding. You might not agree, like she told you, if you tell the truth, I won't be mad. And you said, okay, I'm going to tell the truth. And she was mad. That's still communication, whether it was good or bad. It's still communication.
But it pushed the man back into a shell where he said, I am never telling her the truth again.
And that's probably because it wasn't a safe place.
Oh, oh, oh.
We'll
Well,
continue this. We'll
Yeah, well,
continue
yeah,
I
this.
was
yeah.
gonna say
We
yes,
need Jews.
because
Yeah,
this we
we
could
need
be
Jews, and we can do
we
this.
need we could do a whole show on communication,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
feel that one of the bottom lines in this, as we wrap this up, because I do want to get to the next point, and this actually leads into the next point. Um, that again, it speaks to everybody does not, I understand, and thank you for stating the Webster definition of communication, but the real deal in everyday life is that we don't always walk by that definition, and the way people communicate is very different, which is why you have to, number, if a person communicates that way, we can't force them to change how they communicate. What we have to do is again real accept that this is how they communicate, or choose the lack thereof, and decide, do we have the capacity and are we equipped to manage how they communicate? Do our communication styles match? And if not, is there a happy medium? So because when we don't, and sometimes even when that silence does lead others to have their own thoughts as to what their silence stands for, sometimes when men or women share what they're saying, they say one thing and we hear something else. So we still can assume, like, you said this, but we still feel that what you're saying is not true, which becomes a combative situation. So with communication, yes, we have to be mature. We have to be willing to be in the learning curve when it comes to communication. We have to make sure that we keep it safe and honest and be keepers of our word. If I tell you I'm not going to get mad, I've learned not to say that because I don't know how. Or rather, I might be like, I'm going to be mad, but I'm going to hear you out and give me time to process it. So these are the things, again, that we are challenged with in relationships with one another and with other people in all types of relationships. So we need to be able to learn how to communicate and know what our communication style is. Otherwise, we end up in the next point, which is conflict. Lack of communication or poor communication or misunderstood communication are three of the things that lead us to conflict. So, Donald, I want to ask you from the male standpoint, what is one way, and I know, and this is a very general, it's a very broad question. I know it's going to vary depending on what the situation is, but when it comes to conflict in relationships, male and female, well, male to female, what is one thing that you feel we as women can do better to help either eliminate or to resolve, help to resolve when conflict comes up? And again, I know it's a very broad question because it depends on what is going on or what the situation is, what the scenario is. But there are some basic key things in conflict resolution and within relationships that we can put into place. So, what say you, Men's Lounge representatives? If you're talking, we can't hear you. I think you're muted. We can't hear you. We still can't hear you. We we can't. I guess it's not meant for you to share. Still can't hear you. All right, so I'm gonna give you a minute to get your volume worked out. So I'm gonna jump over to the ladies. So Tanya, can you hear me? Can we hear you? You good, sis? Okay,
I can hear you.
perfect. All right. So Tanya, from your perspective, when it comes to conflict with our men, what is one thing that you find that is common that causes it, and what can we do to help resolve or lessen the conflict that we have one with another, male to female? What say you, Tanya?
I guess it depends on um, whatever the conflict is, but I always feel like sometimes the conflict and communication it goes hand in hand, because a lot of times when people are in conflict is because there's some type of miscommunication around something. And so I know for me, I feel like when there's a conflict, if I'm in a relationship with someone and there's a conflict, I always need to stop, pause. Okay, let's talk about what happened. I felt this way about this because, and I need to actually say what happened, and then allow the person, to give me their perspective. But also, I think from with that whole thing, for me, in my perspective, I also need the time to process whatever it is that that person is saying as well, because that communication, the conflict, all of that can kind of get muddled if you're not listening to one another, and then there's a conflict, there are hurt feelings, all of that stuff. But it always, to me, is around and around poor or miscommunication. So I don't know, like the two go really hand in hand to me, because for me, anytime there has been a conflict in a relationship with me, it has something to do with a communication. Something was said in a way that hurt somebody's feelings, or now I have to go back and say, okay, I didn't like when this happened. And so now let's discuss whatever it was that happened, and then give the person the opportunity to express why that happened, or how what their perspective it was on it. I can tell you, as we've been talking about these, like in the women's lounge and listening to the men's lounge, and just recently, excuse me, I had to laugh to
Hello?
myself because we talked about how sometimes somebody can say something, but you hear something different.
Right.
And so I know for myself, I have to, pause and really make sure I'm slowing down my own thoughts, because just recently I, made dinner for my honey. So I had made like grilled some fish. I was making a southern dish, grits, and I made spinach. And so, he was like, "Oh, everything tastes delicious." He's like, "The salmon is really good." He was like, "Oh, um the salmon's really good, the spinach is really good." But in my head, I was like, "Oh, he don't like the grits." That's what I heard. And I was about to, I said, "Oh, he don't like the grits." But he didn't say he didn't like the grits. He talking about what he really enjoyed. But before, I would have been like, "Oh, so you didn't like it?" And not in a negative way, but I would have been paranoid that he didn't like it. But I stopped myself. I said, "Nope, he didn't say anything about that. He's concentrate on what he did say." So
Right.
that communication sometimes, with conflict goes hand in hand, because something can become a conflict if you yourself are hearing something else that really wasn't said. And, going back to what, thinking about what Pastor Rosa said, you know, you got to know who you are, and you have to know who the person you're with is. You're with me, I'm with you. So as we're learning one another, then we can kind of roll with the punches and things like that. But I do want to say one little point about the whole communication. We're all talking about communicating, conflict, and things like that. And one point I want to say that I didn't get to say about it is sometimes people will communicate stuff to manipulate. And you
Sure.
know, that might be another show, but I have experienced it where they'll over communicate something. It's like a love bombing, and they'll over communicate something. They're like love bombing you, and they're telling you all this nice, beautiful stuff, and you're like, oh, this person, you know, he's the best communicator ever. But they're communicating to only manipulate you, because at the back end of it, you realize that stuff that they were communicating was, in fact, it wasn't real. It was just trying to manipulate you and draw you in, and, you know, have you feeling like, you know, this is the best. They're the best. You know, this is the best male on earth, because they're communicating so heavily. Because I'm thinking about what Lane said. You know, sometimes some males, and I do understand that we communicate everything. We're like, oh honey, my car got stopped, I went and bought fish from the store, this happened at school today. We're saying all these things, and you know, you're like, how was your day? Oh, it was good. And you're like, what else? You know, you want more. So
Right.
So
Because
that's
we have different communication styles. Right. Well, I thank you. Thank you for your shit.
the
Right.
conflict and the communication for me always went hand, from my experience, always went hand in hand. If we having a conflict, it was generally based on something that was done, something that was communicated, that feelings got in the way, and then now I had to go back and say, this hurt my feelings, and let's kind of talk about it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. And I'm glad that things have flown the way they are, because one does lead into the other. And your shares were
Yep.
excellent. And yes, we can hear you now, Donald. Before we go, before we comment more, I want to read the comments that Sir Hale. Welcome, Sir Hale. We love you. We want to read the comments that he has shared with us. He says, pride and the need to have the last word are two issues that will turn simple conflict into outright battle, which is so true. And we have to pause on that and hold it for a second, because sometimes we don't realize we are being prideful. We know, because we're so accustomed to communicating our way and about having our way, or being strong in what we feel, that we don't realize that we become prideful because we're not willing to be open to hear what the other person is saying, or to think about how I'm expressing what I feel to the other person. And that's prideful. So pride does need to we said pride and the need to have the last word. Mighty God. You know, women, that's us. And well, I want to say that's kind of 50-50, because men want to be like, and that's it, you know. So I don't know what that is or why they feel that way. But it's just like, you know, you want to put the period on it. So we do have
They want to say, I don't want to talk about it no more. And
right.
And there's a
Right.
reason for that. There's a reason.
Right. There is a reason. There is a reason. But when y'all put that, I'm gonna have the last word, it's like, nah, bro, because then that triggers, as we talked about last
That's
week.
y'all doing it too. Because
But see, I said both of us. I said both of us. I did say men and women. See, you triggered already. He ready to go. You triggered.
Mom, step in.
I said it. Hold on. I'm hosting. Mommy got to wait her turn. See, now we're having a failure to communicate, and now it's going to turn into conflict, and we don't want to have an outright battle. We're about to live out what Sir Hale is talking about right here. So we're going to kill our pride. And the other point that he made is humility, compassion, and understanding are three elements that are needed in successful conflict resolution. Absolutely, yes, and thank you, sir. Sir Hale, we got to have you come on when we do this, because we're gonna do a whole communication podcast, because apparently it's needed, so we could break down these walls and find a better way to deal with one another. Because this is so true. Humility, compassion, and understanding are three elements that are needed in successful conflict resolution. We have to be humble enough to sometimes there's a used to say one thing that taught me, I'm sorry, to how to be humble in a relationship or a situation is well, do you want to be right, or do you want to get it right? Because you can be right. You can be, But sometimes in your being right, the pride steps in and it creates a bigger issue because we are now puffed out because, well, I was right and I told you so, that now we're getting it wrong in how we're communicating that. We're not to lord it over one or the other because guess what? I could be right today and you could be right tomorrow. So we have to remain humble and be compassionate one to another. And again, understanding they are needed, especially in the midst of resolving whatever the conflict um, that is going on. It says, do you respect me enough to hear me and respect what I'm saying? Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. And that is one of my points when it comes to the point of communication. You may not be communicating in a way that I want. You may not even be responding. Your response to communicate may not be a way that I like, but I still have to hear you and respect that this is how you decided. I don't have to agree with it, but I have to respect that this is how you decided to communicate your response and then determine how I'm going to respond to your response. And I feel that's where the whole maturity again starts. It's a learning curve that we are in, and we have to do that. Sir Hill says, excellent example at Tanya Williams, talking about your example of dinner. And Von Eric is laughing at our display of acting out exactly what Sir Hale was talking about pride, needs to have the last word. And thank you, Donald, for the role play. This is what we do, y'all, in real life all the time. Um, so what now says innovation and creating listening. Listening is absolutely important. I have to hear you out to hear what you're saying. Because like Tanya said, sometimes even if you said I like the salmon and I like the shrimp, but still in my mind, I already came to a conclusion that because you didn't comment on anything else on the meal, that you didn't like anything else in the meal, when that's not what he said. He brought out the points of what he enjoyed the most. So even sometimes when people are expressing, we're listening to what they're not saying. And sometimes we take that and run with it, and that creates the conflict because I'm sure, girl, everything in you is about to be like, well, bro, what about, because I know me. I'd be like, so what, so you don't like, my grits? And what about the spinach? I slaved hard over that spinach. It ain't easy to keep spinach, to keep it moist and to keep it, like it's pretty now. You know what I'm saying? Like I put my love into the spinach. You ain't talk about it. But he was sharing those things, and those things can create conflict as well. And Nay says, wow, so true. And I'm trying to see where we are. Okay. And Nay says, pride is out here peacocking. I love you, Anae. I love you. Yes, it is. Pride is out here showing out. It is showing out absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and we want to welcome. So now what? Welcome to the show, and welcome to everybody who has been tapping in and who is here with us. I'm going to ask that you like, subscribe, and share on tonight. If you're enjoying this conversation, it is important and essential that we have these discussions. So now what innovate and create says listening, hearing, and understanding are all different. So true. And making sure to listen rather than preparing my response is essential. We miss opportunities to grow when we plan what to say next. That is so true. Because then we are not listening, we're just waiting to respond. And 9 times out of 10, when we do, we end up responding wrong. And we take the whole conversation to a whole nother angle and level that is not necessary. So we do have to understand these key points: listening, hearing, and understanding, and making sure that we're responding to what the person said, not necessarily always responding to how it made us feel. Don't start there. I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when we were having the ladies' room, and Tanya brought up the point, and I agreed with her when she said, when a person is speaking and taking a pause to know that we've understood what they said, her response will start out with, and again, I find myself doing this too. So what I heard you say was, or if I understood you correctly, this is what you said. Is that, am I hearing you right? Because we want to embrace what you're saying. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the point of feeling like we have to agree with what's being said, as opposed to I just need to receive what you said. So that's a place where the conflict comes in, because we are already defensive because we don't agree with what a person says. So then we become defensive and combative instead of addressing it from the point of I respect and receive what you're saying. However, this is how I feel, so that we can communicate and not shut down. So, Donald, now that your volume is back, what did you want to share?
I think it got covered by the men that chatted.
Okay.
What I wanted to share. So if there was anything I would add to that is, look, the whole bottom line to all of this that we just covered on what is a way that a woman can help avoid conflict. I think that's how you phrase the question. Um, Look, listening and just have respect for what's being said, and I think that goes on both sides. Respect one another's feelings, thoughts, and opinions. You don't have to agree with it. You can agree to disagree, and you both can walk away. There's no win. What you and me were illustrating, there's no win in that. There's no, well, I got the last word. That's wasting time. If you're trying to communicate what your thought, your feeling, concern is, just, just get to the point, share the point. Then we find a resolution to the issue, and then we move on for it. Because circling back around the same thing over and over again, that says, that kind of plays into what Lane was saying earlier. That says that the communication is non-existent. We're just fussing at each other. We're not fixing. We're not fixing what's wrong, and we're not sharing. So yeah, I think, like I said already, the men who chimed in the chat pretty much covered what I wanted to say.
Yes, thank you. Donald, you are not alone. Yeah, your brothers, the brave brothers are showing up in the chat for you. They got you. You're the representative on tonight. It is so
Where was they
important.
earlier?
That's what they hear. Communicate well. No conflict, Donald. No conflict. They're your
I'm just
brothers.
being
They
silly.
got
I'm
you.
just being silly.
Um, I want to catch up in the chat. Sir Hale said he repeated, respond to what they said, not how it made you feel. Dawn B. Yes. That is what we need to do. Not leading our response by our emotions. Don't let your response be emotionally led, because what happens, or what I found, is that when we do that and we go far left, the person that you are talking to then feels like you didn't hear a word I said. You wasn't listening anyway. And again, that goes back to the communication. So all of this is great, and it is flowing right into the next point. I do want to again welcome everybody. Welcome superfood parents. Welcome to, and we see you, our silent listeners, our silent watchers up there. We see you, and we thank you for being here as well. We're going to ask you to like, subscribe, and share. Please like, subscribe, and share. These conversations are important. It's real talk and real resolution. Superfood Parent says, good day to everyone. I'm still behind in the chat. That's all right. Watching and chatting, watching and catching up while enjoying Brother Donald's input on women's communication. That's a good thing. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, and Sir Hale said, I believe he asked, can we do, oh, he's ready to go. He said, Bravo with Sheila, can y'all do a show 7 days per week? We would love to. We would love to. We're gonna have to talk about that. And I want to thank our Queen Bee, Elaine, who had to drop off, unfortunately, but want to thank her for popping on, and she'll be back with us. I know my sis Tanya T Bless has to pop off, so when she has to, we want to bid her a great evening, and thank you for always coming on and for sharing your great wisdom along with us. We really do appreciate it. And all of this has been great conversation. Uh, FL Cole 61 says, for the record, Honey Bunny, I did love the grits. Okay. Okay. See now, you know what? You gonna have to put some double portion of grits on his plate next time. Okay. We got your back, bro. He is communicating. That's what I'm talking about. Communicating. All right now. Watch it. Watch it. You gonna get some extra love in the grits next
Extra
time.
love. It's
See,
his birthday
see,
today. So extra
and
love.
Right. You gonna
and
get
and
you gonna get You're gonna get 3 pats of butter and some cheese. The good cheese.
And he was listening.
He was
Right.
listening. He was listening.
He's
He
gonna
was
get the Cracker
listening,
Barrel
Ben.
cheese up in there. He ain't gonna get the store brand.
So give the
You
brother
want to
a
get
break.
stuffed
So-
shrimp the next time.
Right.
Stuffed shrimp, stuffed salmon.
He gonna have grits for the next day. Right. I love it. See what communicating gets you? You see?
He
This
deserves a
is
reward.
real talk right here. This is how
He
we do
deserves
it
an extra serving of grits.
on the Bravo with Sheila. That where else can you get such things? Right here. This is real life happening right here. Thank you, bruh. Thank you. He said he did love it. And see, like we could end the show on that right there. 'Cause I say, where do you go after that? I'm saying, bruh. I'm gonna mail you a box of grits just for him, sis. Just because I want.
Can I step in for a minute?
Yes, let me just welcome our
Okay.
Sean. Thank you so much for joining us on tonight. We're just having a great time here talking about the different things that go on in relationship between men and women. It is the men's lounge versus the ladies' room. So we welcome you to the show and thank you for tapping into us. Donald, what would you like to share before we get to the last point? So
You know what? Let's
we can.
just get to the last point. I'll share it
Okay.
with Tanya.
All right. So this all works together. We started out by talking about communication and saying how there is maturity is necessary. It's a learning curve in that, and we have to create safe spaces so that people can be honest about how they're feeling, and we have to know our capacity and be equipped to embrace what they are saying in the communication. And when we don't, we find that leads into our second point, which is conflict. And we need to be able to hear one another in order to respect and apply humility and understanding and not pride within conflict resolution. We have to lead with humility, listening, and understanding in order to resolve our conflicts one with another in a peaceable way where we are still together. Our resolution is not for us to be pulled apart, but we want to find a resolution that keeps us together. And with that leads us to our last point, which is compromise. This is where the compromise comes in. You see how that all blends together? You see how it blends together? I want to read this comment before I'm going to ask you guys to share on your point of compromise. Superfood Parent says, good to see you all at Anae, at Sir Hale, at Bravo with Sheila Network. Okay, change my channel name from Blind Guy, his wife, to be more specific. All right, welcome, sir. Good to see you. And of course, Arvon Eric is also here. So from what we have talked about from communication that leads into conflict, this is where we get to the point of the compromise. Because at the end of the day, we don't want our lack of communication and our inability to resolve conflict to pull us apart. We want to be able to come together in compromising. So I'm going to ask this question, and if everybody can answer within like 2 minutes, we can wrap up our show on tonight because I feel your points are important. So I'm going to leave it, Tanya, and ask you, Tanya, when it comes to compromise, what are your feelings, your views, and what is one key thing that that you can share that you use that helps when it comes to compromising?
I think with compromise, what I've learned is to try my best to act unselfishly. So when I'm thinking about, you know, what another person is asking for, if it's not in conflict with my morals or my values and my Christian character, but if it's something that, you know, they're asking me for, how can I not be selfish? And, you know, how can I act unselfishly? Um, you know, I'm just thinking about an example, like me and my honey a couple of months ago was just kind of sharing, like, we'll do this thing. And I always prompt it and I say, let's talk about, you know, some things that, you know, if we could improve something in the relationship. We've been dating for 2 years. And if we can improve something, what would it be? So he'd be like, oh, I don't know. I said, so let's think about something. Just try to think about things that we could improve. If there was one thing you can improve, that something about me that you would like to see different, what would it be? So we kind of talked about that. And so, he gave me, 1 point, because we're in two different locations right now. So he's in Virginia, I'm in Maryland. And so most of our communicating is through the phone. And so one time he was like, sometimes we'll be on the phone talking, and I always have people calling me, all the time. And he said sometimes, I'm trying to get my point out, and somebody's calling you, be like, oh honey, let me call you right back because such and such is calling. Now from my perspective, I'm thinking, well, people are calling me all the time. And most of the time, like, we talk a couple of times through the day. We'll try, like, before work, we'll text a couple of times, and then when we get home. And sometimes, like, I'll let a call pass. But for him, it was feeling like he couldn't get his point out because I'm cutting the conversation off. So he's not seeing that I'm letting calls go by a lot of times, but he'll see, like, I'm like, oh, let me get this call because such and such is calling. So he was like, sometimes I feel like I'm not able to, I'll forget my point by the time we get back to the conversation because you're cutting it off. So I had to think about it, because at first I was about to get offended. And I said, well, let me think about that. And I explained to him, I said, sometimes, people are calling me all the time. I'm a teacher. I'm involved in a lot of different things. I have a lot of calls coming through. Sometimes I'll let a lot of them go. And I said, but what I can't compromise on, allowing you to finish whatever you're saying. And then after, we get up, then call the person back. So that was my compromise to him. So just trying to think of, as we move forward in a relationship, or if I'm with, anyone, and if they're asking me for something, how can I compromise to be less selfish and not only think about how I feel, but how does this person feel?
That's really good, sis. That's good. And I appreciate that share. And what I will say in response to that is, one of the very first shows that we did when you were on, you made the point of, I'm going to word it this way, of leading with service, with how can I, coming into the relationship, thinking, how can I serve you? How can I help you? Not what can you do for me, but what can I do for you? And I feel that your share about how you handled coming to a resolution instead of it growing into a greater conflict. You didn't want it to be an issue, although it had, the issue had a head on it, but you didn't want that head to grow.
Right.
So you were willing to compromise, find a solution to compromise. You were mindful and respectful of his feelings. You heard him out. And I think the beautiful thing in that is the attitude or the feel that I got from is that you realize that this compromise takes nothing away from you.
Exactly.
And a matter of fact, it's going to add to you, because it's going to enhance your relationship and make sure that your honey feels important and that he has your full attention. Because sometimes those that are closest to us, we will tend to put them, we always expect for them to understand all the time,
Right.
and saying, oh, okay, well, hold on. Oh, okay, hold on. Okay, wait. Sometimes they don't want to wait.
Right.
It's bad enough we got to share you with the world, but now, like, I can't even have my 5 minutes of fame with you. So I think that is amazing. So if we had to pull anything from out of there, it's the fact that you were willing to listen. You were willing to find what you could do. You didn't leave it up to him to make that decision. You heard him and you were proactive about finding something that would keep you together before anything else created a wedge. So that is amazing. And I commend you for that. You go, girl. You're going to get some grits too. You're going to get some grits too. So thank you for that. If you have to pop off, we understand. And I thank you so much for joining us as always. Stay as long as you like, but if you have to go, we do understand. So Donald, and then I'm going to ask Mama to share too. We do have a comment. Superfood Parents says, hey there, enjoying your musical tracks. Thank you again. Listening to the conversation makes me realize I have to communicate the other things I enjoy about it. And we thank you for that comment. Communication is key. And again, that may not, you understanding, Tanya, how busy your life is and the things that you have to do, and you're pulled in a million directions, but also knowing that the same is with him. Our priorities may be different, but if he's blocking out that time for you, you heard it from a different place and not hearing it from what he said and what you wanted to hear. You heard him and responded to what he said, not how what he said made you feel. And that's one thing that we have to do in compromise, I believe, is understand that it does not take away from us. And Nay says this was a great discussion. Thank you, and Nay, our number one brother. So Donald, for the men's lounge, when it comes to compromise, what can we as women do to help? Um, I want to say help you feel like we're willing to meet you in the middle. Because now I'm not a man and I don't know, but possibly sometimes men feel like you have to give up your compromise is giving up everything or 99% of the things that you may feel because you guys just want peace, if I'm understanding men correctly. So sometimes you give up what you want, but um, I don't think that that's the proper response that we should have if we're trying to improve relationships. So, what do you feel we can do better to meet you in the middle when it comes to compromise?
Meet us in the middle, period. So if you don't want us to give up our, how did you phrase it? When I said it the same way earlier, actually, when it comes to wanting peace and sometimes having to bow out, when we really shouldn't have to. Meet us in the middle, compromise with us. The purpose of a compromise is to come into an agreement, resolve a dispute, hear both sides, each side listening to the other side, and basically, weighing the elements of the conversation from each side and saying, well, where can we meet in the middle on this? Companies do it all the time. The government supposedly does it. And we who are common everyday folk, who interact with each other, whether it's work, home, you name it, socially, etc. Um, we can do it too. What does it really take? It takes two sides to listen. So what we men are just asking you ladies to do for us when it comes to a compromise is a agree to disagree sometimes. Even if and I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but it does work because sometimes you can get to the heart of a problem if you just get to a point where you realize that okay, I gotta listen to my wife as she expresses to me what it is that she wants me to compromise on. I need her to understand the things I heard her say and how I would like for her to understand my feelings about it. And then we come to that medium where we say, okay, so I heard you and I heard this is what you said. You heard me and you heard this is what I said. So the goal here is to obviously find a medium that says, okay, we can we can we can have this meeting of the minds. We can find a common ground to work on. We're going to have to give up some things of ourselves in order to basically accomplish the end result, which is coming to a compromise that says, okay, we're going to go ahead and and this is what we're doing, and have a plan that works. Don't set, whether it be for yourselves as well as together. Have a plan that's realistic. Have a plan that works. If you have to write it out, write it out. If you have to get each other to sign at the bottom line that says, well, like my wife has asked me on occasions in the past when I was always too quick to give real fast responses right away, kind of like acting the way our father would act, daddy would act, and I realized somewhere after the fact that my not listening to something or letting her finish ended up really becoming pie in my face. So what we did at one point was I would sign an agreement that says this that I would exercise a lot that I would exercise stronger listening skills and talk less when she's talking. And we kind of both agreed to the same came to that same agreement. Um, I know I said it earlier, sometimes us men we throw our hands up when it comes to certain conversations that are going on that may be delicate, sensitive, we're not prepared for. You know, you ladies are usually really quick and ready to catch us at the right time, which is the wrong time, or the wrong time, which is the right time. And, but what we need to do better, I would agree, is learn to kind of like stop and listen. And we just ask that while we're listening to you, don't make those assumptions, those presumptions. Don't be so quick to think you already know what we're going to say before we say it. If we're trying to come to a compromise in conversation, in conflict, in communication, then we're both going to have to give up some give up some rights, feelings, emotions, whatever the elements are, and really come to the bottom line of this is what we need to do. This is where we need to meet. This is the goal intended behind why we're doing this. You're always going to have to give up something in order to find a compromise between in communication. But if the goal in that is you come to an agreement that's reasonable, that's mutual, that's acceptable, and each one is willing and has a willingness to do their part, then in the end it's a win-win for everybody. And if you love someone that much, like I love my sister, we have had moments, not very many, but when we've had moments where we agreed to disagree, we still laugh and giggle at the end.
True. Very true. I want to thank you for your shares. It's very key when it comes to compromise, and we have to understand that you made a great point of agree to disagree. We have a comment from so what innovative, so now what innovative and create says many men acquiesce to the happy wife, happy life fallacy, which is true, and inwardly feel that being a man or a husband means less important. Because of this, we men are often left feeling insignificant in love. And that is true. And that is one of the very points that, that's why I said, men, oftentimes you feel like your compromise is giving up what you feel in order to keep the peace amongst the women. He also says a great compromise is oftentimes a simple first look or show of concern to see how we may be feeling on an issue. Yes, sir. In many relationships, it's the shut up, you're a man treatment that leaves men hurt. Hmm. Ladies, lean in. Ladies, lean in. These are very true and very real points. And we may not want to face those ugly truths, but it really is. These are great points that happen in relationships all the time. And that's why there's so much damage that we are doing to one another. So I
That
want to thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Huh?
I just wanted to quick share on the part of that part of the comment in the chat that said "Happy wife, happy life." Whoever came up with that expression, may I say it freely, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Because what makes a woman really happy is how you treat her, and how you communicate with her. That expression, in other words, to me, causes, I think that's the point the gentleman made, causes men to retreat more than, you know, I don't want to say stand their
Well,
ground, but it causes a retreat.
well, we have to treat each other properly. That's how you
Huh?
get to
Yeah,
a
right, and
happy
that's what
wife and
I'm saying.
happy
So
life is
when,
that
right, but
it
if you
has to
retreat
be
as a man, if you retreat because you're in a conflict that does not have a compromise, then that gives that, and it goes both ways. If a, but
right.
because that
It goes
expression is specific to men, I'm saying men should that that's something that I really don't like that
right. You
expression,
don't
and we
subscribe to.
I don't subscribe to. Yeah, yeah.
Right. That's and exactly that's right. So I was saying these are the things that we have to talk about, and it's a hard truth. And these are the some of the myths or fallacies that we have to now break because it's creating great imbalance and causing you as men to not be respected and honored and treated in the way that you should. And therefore, we communicate off because we go into it with an off perception that creates the conflict and it gets to the point of compromise where all you want is peace and you're willing to do that. You're willing to get the peace by giving up what you may really want or giving up your voice. And that's what we don't want.
And that's
So,
what misleads women, and that's misleading towards you women because if a man retreats into a shell or happy wife, happy life, then she starts to think that well maybe he's not secure, or maybe she starts to feel like she's not secure with him because he's easy to give in and not make it and not make it more of an interest, a challenge, or a compromise. I'm sorry, I know our time
right.
is
No, it's
running out.
okay.
I wanted to point that out.
It's all right. I get it. No, we're saying the same thing, and we are again hitting, we come to stir up the pot and hit these issues on the head and talk about the things that people don't want to talk about. But it's a real point and a real truth. And I want to leave some last final words to our voice of reason. She's been sitting there so quietly and so patiently because things have just gone the way that they've been going tonight. And we always thank God for her presence. But I want to say thank you to everybody again. I hope you will like, subscribe, and share. Even, watch the replay, share it with someone, go back and watch it, whatever you missed, and just glean from the nuggets that were left here for concerning communication, concerning conflict and how we resolve it, and concerning compromise. Please understand that because you compromise, it does not mean that you are losing anything. A matter of fact, in compromising, you are gaining more than you would ever imagine. And I would just say, do what you need to do to salvage your relationship. Do what you need to do to salvage your relationship, because it's better that you um, don't worry about being right, worry about doing right, and do what's right by one another. So before we end on tonight, I do, like I said, want to give last words to Mom, to give her, if she could give us a quick 2 minute synopsis, or her input, so that we can wrap up and end this show. Next week, with Dawn being friends, we're going to have Meet the Authors. I'm going to come back and share with you a little bit more about that before we end really quickly. And also on 7-Eleven, somebody say 7-Eleven. Say what now? 7-Eleven. Join Bravo with Sheila broadcast, where she was talking about her animated role in the movie. Yes, come through, Bravo. Yes, Auntie. Her animated role in the movie Stevie, When Life Happens to a Mother and Son. So please mark the dates. If you're not following us, set your notifications, like, subscribe, and share. We see you up in the silent booth, um, up in the silent seats, the watchers up top, and we love and appreciate you all for hanging in there with us. I'm gonna give my mom the space to come and share her final thoughts, and then I'm gonna close it out. Mom.
I'm just gonna say, in listening to everything that everyone is saying, it's personal to everyone. It's true. We don't devalue anything that anybody said. But my question is, if you seriously want a relationship, or, you want to be in in the ring, that you have a sparring partner and everybody's trying to get their point across and say, this is what I want. And, relationship is it's not a wrestling match. It's a relationship. It's not about whether I'm right and you're wrong and whatnot. It's the relationship. So you do whatever you have to do to keep your relationship healthy. Yes, listen and hear what the other person is saying, so you know how to respond. And don't be presumptuous, as Donald was saying earlier. We do have a tendency to have, perceptualize, if that's such a word, what the other person is saying. And that's so wrong to do that. We have to listen, but I mean, that's just my point. As Sir Harold said, be humble, be compassionate, understanding, and have respect. Those things are not therapy, words that we just use in therapy. You really have to manifest those things in a relationship for it to work. Otherwise, you'll find yourself by yourself. You be in a relationship and the other person has nothing to say because they don't know how to communicate, how to interact or relate. So I'm just saying, if you really want to be in a relationship, you have to really work at it. You just have to be ready.
And there you have it, folks. If you want to be in a relationship, you just have to be ready. And we get ready by making sure we are communicating properly with maturity. Again, grace in the learning curve, creating safe spaces, be honest, know your capacity, be equipped. to handle what comes when it comes to conflict. Give yourself a timeout to consider how to resolve. We have a comment from Michelle Roach that says, excellent discussion. Thank you so much, Michelle. Again, when it comes to conflict, give yourself a timeout to consider how we're going to resolve this. And that way it walks you right into your space of compromise, understanding that compromise does not mean that you are going to lose anything. In compromise, it's how can we win? And we can win when we come into relationships leading with service, leading with how can I serve you? So on tonight, I want to thank everybody. We had Sir Hale giving us some bravo claps, and so now what innovative and create is also giving us some bravo claps, and bravo to you all. Thank you so much. I absolutely love and appreciate being your Thursday night host here on the Bravo with Sheila channel. Again, join us next Thursday. We're gonna take it back to, I don't know if you remember when we were in school, you had summer reading. You had a whole list of books that you could choose from, and you had to read a certain amount of books throughout the summer. So for the summer, I wanted to start a summer reading series called This Is My Story, and we're gonna start with our Meet the Authors Men's Edition, and we're gonna be bringing on different people throughout the summer to have a segment where you get to meet the author, bringing them on to share their books, to share their life experience, and give you the opportunity to support and purchase them, so that you can invest in yourself and invest in your life. So join us next Thursday on 7/6. And then mark your calendar, please, sir, please, ma'am, and thank you for 7/11. Let us blow up these YouTube streets. Let us blow up the Bravo with Sheila broadcast of 7/11 as she comes on to talk about her animated role in the movie Stevie, when life happens to a mother and son. It's a don't miss moment. So as we exit on tonight, again, I want to say thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. We come here to have real talk, real resolution. We are not here to convict nor to convince, but we are here to create a safe space where we can have open dialogue, healthy discussion that will help us to build better relationships with one another, and most of all, the relationship with ourselves. And if you don't mind, when the show is over, when this broadcast is over, please like, subscribe, and share. But leave a comment. Tell us what you felt about the chat. Give us some feedback, and we will appreciate it so very much. So good night. God bless. Be encouraged. We love you, and be well. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, 204. God bless. Hail to Pastor Sheila. We love you, and good night.